In this video, we're going to go over blueprint communication and the various ways you can do that in Unreal 4. So far we've done pretty simple things where if we walk into this light, it changes color. But what if this light affected, like say, the player's health? You would have to have this blueprint communicate with another script. Okay, we haven't done that yet. So what we want to do is if we go to blueprints and we go to the character folder and then open up their first person character blueprint, um, we'll find that there's already some scripting in here. We'll find the script for looking around, and here's the scripting for movement. Okay, and this is set up by default. And we also have this event begin play. We've got a few variables over here just for like turning around and movement, and we've got a few components which we can also see in the viewport. If it's very far away, just click on anything here and press F and you should focus on it. So here we have a camera, so this is how we actually see the game. We've got arms, and I've disabled them just because the guns that we use don't fit with the animations on the arms. We've got a capsule component, so this is our collision box. So this is actually what hits the floor and allows you to walk around. And then we've got our gun as well. So what we want to do is we want to add in a variable called health. And we're going to make that a float. You'll notice I can't put it in a default value yet. I have to compile it and then put it in. So I'll just switch it to 100 and then compile it. And what I want to do is I'm going to make a custom event. So instead of using something like event begin play or event tick, I'm going to make my own custom event that I can call on. So I'm going to right click, type in custom event and add custom event. And I'm going to name this health underscore decrease. And all I'm going to do with this is I'm going to set our health by taking our health or getting our health and minus maybe 10 off it, plug it in there, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to print off our health. So I'm just going to get it again. So whenever this event is called, it's going to set our health by getting our current health, taking 10 off that, and then whatever our health is, it's going to print it off on the screen. Okay, so it's where we get a read off. But we want this to happen when we walk into our light. Okay, so when we walk into this box for our light, we not only want it to change the time, or sorry, the color of the light, we also wanted to call that function or that event that we just made. So how do we do that? Well, the best and easiest way is use the cast2 node. Okay, so if we right click and type in cast2, we can cast to whatever class that we have in our project. So we've got the first person character class up here, so I'm going to type in first person character. But what you need to do is give it an object, because it's a bit complicated, but you could have a few characters in your scene and you have to tell this script here what character you want to use. So what we want to do is just right click and type in get player character. We're going to get the player character and plug it in as our object. Okay, so whatever character we have control, and it's a first person character class, that's what we're going to use. And then this blue one we're going to pull out. And if we look, we named our event health decrease. And if I pull out from this one and type in health, you can see I can call that function health decrease. So when we walk into the light now, not only should it check if it's a player, and if it is, change the light color, it's also going to cast to our first person character class, and it's going to decrease the health by calling this function. And this function is also going to print out the health on the screen. So let's compile and save that. And let's just check 2 seconds. Compile and save the other one as well. So if I press play, and if I go in this area now again, the light should change, but up in the top left hand corner here we should see a readout of our health, and it should be 90. And it's calling it quite a bit because I made a slight mistake. It's calling it over and over again because this light intensity is hitting off, this update one's hitting off every frame, so it means every frame all these here are being called, so we don't want that to happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to get a new node. Okay, I'm just going to move this over, and we're going to pull out from this true, and we're going to type in sequence. Okay, so see that sequence node? We're going to use that. To disconnect these, I'm just going to hold Alt and click on that node. Disconnects. And then I'm going to get that sequence and plug it in there. So this branch can only do one thing, okay, if it comes off true. But what we can do is plug it into a sequence which does the 0 first, and then it does the 1 next. We can add in pins if we want. We can delete them just by right clicking and hitting remove execution pin. So it's going to change the light color, and while it's doing that, it's also going to cast our player and decrease the health. So a bit of debugging there. And walk in. You can see the lights changing and it's taking health off us. And I can keep doing that. And since I'm telling the timeline for our light to play from the start, it'll keep playing it over and over again every time I walk in. So that's one way of communicating with blueprints. Okay, so let's look at another way that we can control or communicate between two blueprints. So I'm just going to get rid of all my lights in the scene for a minute. And I'm going to place in that light BP that we've been using. So this here one has all the coding that we had before. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another class, okay? So I'm just going to right click, blueprint class, choose an actor again, and I'm just going to call this one switch. So this here is going to be our light switch. I'm going to open this up. For a component in this here, we're going to type in box, and we're just going to use a box collision, okay? And I'm just going to make that a bit bigger. And so I can see this in game, okay, which is going to help out later on. I'm just going to come over here to the right hand side and see the way that hidden in game is set to true. I'm just going to set that to false. So when we place this in the level, we're actually going to be able to see that wireframe. And then we're going to go to the event graph. So what we want to have happen is we want to be able to turn on this light BP, okay, blueprint, whenever we walk into the switch box and we press the E key, okay? But the problem with that is you can never have direct control, or you can never interact with a blueprint straight away, okay? So what we have to do is we have to set up so that our controller is enabled for this blueprint when we walk into this box. And the way we can do that is pretty straightforward. If we select our box and scroll down to the bottom, we've got this on component begin overlap, okay? And I'm going to hit the box again, and we've got this on component end overlap. So when we walk into it using begin overlap, we want to have direct control over this blueprint, and when we end our overlap, we want to end that control, okay? So we're going to just right click here, okay, and we're going to enable input, so you can see it there, and we're going to connect that up, and we're going to right click down here, we're going to say disable input. Now the problem with this is at the minute it doesn't know what controller to use, so all we have to do is pull out from this here one and type in player, and you can see get player controller, and we can use that same one for both of them, okay? Just makes it a bit easier. So basically when we walk in now, we can enable input, but when we leave that, we're going to disable input for the player. If you wanted to, you could do a check, so this doesn't happen when any object walks into this box, like we have here where it's checking if it's the player that's doing it, and it's got a branch. So you can do that here, but just for quickness, I'm not going to bother. And then what we're going to do is we're going to right click, we're going to hit the E key, and we're just going to find E for the keyboard. Let's type in keyboard, might be quicker. Yes, it is. So if I type in keyboard, and then I'm just looking for the E key, there we go. You can see with this node, it works when you press E, and it also fires off something when you release E as well. Basically what we want to do is when we press it, okay, and we've got control of this, remember we've got our enable input, that it's going to find a light BP in our scene, and it's going to play this here intensity and set the color and decrease my health. Okay, so that same functionality. So what we want to do is in this light BP is we want to add in a function, because remember this only works if you walk into that box, okay, which we want to bypass. So I'm going to right click, type in custom, and we're going to add a custom event, and we'll just call this light switch, and we'll plug it in here. Okay, so this here custom event is just let me bypass this check, okay, and it's just going straight into the sequence. The only problem is I could have multiple light BPs in my game, okay. So what I need to do is, since I've made this light BB class, it means I can reference that in a variable in this switch class. So what I want to do is create a variable, and I'll just type in light, and then in the variable type here in the detail section, remember we've got all these kind of normal variables that we can use, but we also have object types, okay. And the cool thing about this is whatever kind of class I create, so my light BP, I can search for that in here. So if I type in light underscore BP, you can see there now I've got light BP as an object type. And what I want to do is I want to find a reference to that, okay. So if I plug out my light and get that, so remember this is a reference to my light BP, I'll actually change the name of that BP, and pull out from that. Remember I created this custom event called light switch, so if I pull out from this here and type in light, you can see I've got that function light switch, which means that when I press E and this blueprint is enabled for my input, it's going to call that function. Now the problem with this is there could be multiple light BPs in my level, okay. So to get around that, I'm going to make this variable public, and then I'm going to compile and save. Just going to minimize this for a second, and I'm going to bring in my switch. And you can see when I have this selected in the details panel for that, it's asking me to choose a light BP. So if I select that picker, you see it's not letting me choose any object, okay, unless it's a light BP. You see there, it's letting me pick that. So that means that these here two blueprints in my level have been set up to communicate with each other. So if I press play now, go over to this, remember that means that this here blueprint is now activated, press E, you can see that it's switching that light, and I can keep on calling in that function. One of the final ways that you can communicate between blueprints is using a dispatch node. You kind of use this if you wanted one function, say in the player, to talk to multiple different blueprint classes in your level. It just means it cuts down on the space that you're using in the event graph, and it's a lot easier to manage, especially if you're calling maybe 100 different functions at once. So to demonstrate this, what we're going to do is we've got our light BP here, and inside that I've got a custom event, which is the light switch, which basically bypasses if our player is walking into it, and it changes the color of the light. And we've got one of these here and here. I'm going to delete one of them, and I'm going to make a new light, BP, so just an actor, BP2. Open this up in the event graph, and basically I'm going to make another custom function in this, or custom event. I'm going to call it destroy light. And again, in my viewport, I'm just going to add a component here, and it's going to be a light. So we'll just type in light and point light. And basically what we're going to do is whenever this event is called, we're going to destroy actor. So it's just going to destroy itself. Okay. Compile and save that. In my character, so if I go my character, first person character, so just make sure you're in the event graph, and what we're going to do is we're just going to type in K. We're going to get the key K. It might be a bit hard to find. There we go. And what we're going to do is down here in the left hand side you can see that we've got event dispatchers. Okay, we're going to create a new one, and best time to use event dispatchers is saying is when you're going to try calling multiple functions that are contained in multiple classes in your level. Especially if you want to communicate with a blueprint or level blueprint, you have to use an event dispatcher. So for instance, if you're going to save your game, you could use an event dispatcher to get values from multiple different sources, and then collate them and put them into a save game. Or if you're going to pause the game, you could communicate with loads of different blueprints in your level, and not only pause those blueprints from moving or executing, but also just to tell them to do different things when the game is paused. Or for instance, if you've got a UI which is showing the number of enemies left in the screen, usually what you would do is use an event tick to keep on checking how many enemies are in the level, which is using a lot of resources because that mightn't change each time. But if you use an event dispatcher on an enemy to update that UI every time that it's killed, you know, you're not using as many or as much resources as you would be. So again, I'm just going to call this event dispatcher kill switch. Whenever we press K, okay, oh, just going to compile that. Whenever we press K, we're going to call it. Okay, so we're just going to call that. And you can see already that if I just have this one node and if I've connected that up properly with all the blueprints, it's a lot neater and tidier. And it also means that if I want to call more functions later on, I don't have to come back here and change this. Basically all I have to do is bind this event to other blueprints, and you do that in the other blueprint event graphs. So once that's set up in your player, all you have to do is go to your light, so light BP to start off with, and what we're going to do is we're going to get our event begin play, and we're going to cast to our first person character, and the object is going to be get player character, and we're going to bind event to kill switch. Okay, and basically what you want to do is connect up these two red boxes. So at the beginning of the when I press play now, basically what's going to happen is it's going to bind this event that I have in my first person character to this event here. So basically this event, my light switch, is going to be listening out to see when this is called. and it's going to then do this bit of the function. And if I go to my other light, so my light BP2, I can do the same thing. So if I've got event begin play here, I'm going to cast to first person character. It's going to be my player character, and then I'm going to just type in bind kill switch, and I'm going to bind these two events together. So whenever you're making a function and you need it to be bound to that event, my first person character, that's all you have to do. And you don't have to add anything else to your first person character blueprint. So that just stays the same. So if I compile and save this now, and if I bring my other light in, so my light BP2, press play. So this here one on the right hand side should change color, and the one on the left hand side should just disappear because we're destroying it. So that's me pressing K, and you can see one's changed color and the other one's being destroyed. So that's the use of event dispatchers, and again they're really good if you're going to be communicating with multiple blueprints in your level, or the level blueprint itself, and you can do that to connect up to like multiple functions in those blueprints as well.